So what happens if someone who has never made gingerbread houses before skips all the beginner designs and skips straight to the expert advanced premium level? Well, you're about to find out. I'm going to make this gingerbread-inspired village to cover up the base of my Christmas tree. But not only that, I'm challenging myself to make it using rubbish. Here's the plan. Measure the size I need and then cut the pieces of cardboard. I need to figure out the colour, the icing, and the windows. Oh yeah, and most importantly, I need to make sure that it doesn't look like cardboard. I want it to look so good that you want to eat it. This project did not go smoothly. I made almost every mistake you could possibly make. So it's safe to say that even if you have no experience and make lots of mistakes, you can still come out with something that looks quite good, all things considered. I'm aiming for something like this. But would you look at that? I've got a bit carried away and made this as my tester. It's already looking quite good, I think, but little did I know, this was my first mistake. You don't want to assemble the house until the very end. But I didn't know that yet, and I was too focused on something that was irritating me. The cardboard was not looking delicious. It just looks like cardboard, which is not delicious. So I'm gonna try out some ways to make it a slightly more golden brown, yummy color. I found a video on YouTube that specifically shows how to mix gingerbread colored paint. And here's my summary in the form of a pie chart. Gingerbread color is basically a dark shade of orange. So it's equal parts red and yellow, and then just a tiny amount of black to darken it to get to that gingerbread color. So I now know how to make gingerbread colored paint. But it's not just the color that isn't delicious, it's the texture. I want to hide those cardboard ridges. I actually tried mixing cork, water, and paint. And quite honestly, it worked really well. The only thing was that it was messy and quite time consuming. If I were a perfectionist, I would consider doing this because it did really dry very, very smooth. But because I'm a bit impatient and I'm still figuring this all out, I decided to instead try gesso, which I used for the first time on my gold tapestry project, and this worked fine to smooth out the texture. Now, of course, you don't want it to look like cardboard, but it's not the biggest deal if there's a little bit of texture, because when you do the icing, you can get a little bit clever with your design to disguise or distract from it. While I waited for my tester to dry, I moved on to my second mistake, which was progressing with the second house before I had actually finished my first one. A common theme I've noticed throughout this whole project is that my aspirations do not match my skills. And I really need to work on that because here I am, I've never made anything like this before, and my second one I'm ever making will have 3 balconies. And that's my third mistake, choosing a design which was way out of my depth. And also my fourth mistake, which was not fully planning out the design before I forged ahead, which resulted in some design flaws. I must say though, my final product, while it is riddled with structural design and decorative mistakes, considering my skill set, I'm actually still impressed with myself for making it. But now that the paint is dry on the first house, how am I going to get the icing detail onto here? What can I use? I thought that the obvious choice would be puff paint, but when it arrived, it was so small. I'm going to need so much for the amount that I want to make, so I'm gonna have to get creative. I need something that's just like icing. I'm having a thought. When I did my stool project, I used this super smooth joint compound product, and I remember thinking that this was just like icing. So why not try it? Even though this product worked great, as I put it into the disposable piping bag, I'm making my 5th mistake, which was that I was way too ambitious with trying to have such a fine, detailed design on this. Thicker icing is much more forgiving, and so would have been a much more appropriate choice for a beginner. I'm slowly starting to add the icing to the window frames and the places where the joints would be, because I know that's definitely what I need. I was actually a bit unsure of myself at this point, but I found that the more I did it, the more I became comfortable with sort of working out the design as I progressed. A few things I learnt from this test were the icing wasn't runny enough at the beginning. It got easier to use as I went on, and I think that's from it warming up in my hand. Also, this particular batch is a few months old, so it's not quite ideal. I did buy a fresh batch and that was way better. Also, I shouldn't have assembled this first. It would have been much easier to do the decorative icing on a flat surface and then only add the finishing touches to the joins once it's assembled. Which is nice to know, but unfortunately I've already assembled half of my 3-balcony wonder over here, so we'll have to work with that. I do think the really thin lines of detail can look really good on gingerbread houses. It was just unrealistic for me to attempt that kind of thing so early on in my cardboard gingerbread house building career. Also, as I step back, I realised that this shape here looks like underwear. So that definitely wasn't my intention, but now I've got a house with some underwear on the front of it. The final touch was adding windows, and I'm quite proud of myself that I managed to make these out of rubbish as well. I had this plastic which actually came from around a birthday cake, so I just stuck these on the back with tape, pretty easy. To make sure that you could really appreciate the windows from afar, I added some lines with icing. As I progressed, I improved my technique and I planned them out more. And following my own advice from all my mistakes, I think each one got better and better. Just as I was getting really comfortable with this, I got some paint mixed at the hardware store because I was getting sick of mixing acrylic paints. And boy, was it different to the first colour I was doing. I was really worried that the new paint that I got, with it looking like so orange, especially when you see it next to these, I was really worried that they were going to look really bad and I was going to have some kind of mishmash looking, just not looking like a village, looking like someone who changed their paint strategy halfway through, which is what happened, but I don't want it to look like that's what happened. And so my thought was, maybe I make these ones with the other paint and I hide them at the back so they just kind of like, you know, just dissolve into the back and it doesn't matter so much. But good news. Here you can see two different ones. This one is done with the orange and this one is the one that I mixed. And I think that just because of the light of the Christmas trees, perhaps the color of the green reflecting down as well from the color of the tree, you can't tell. Like it looks slightly different, but not like, it's not that outrageous for them to be that different because different batches of gingerbread would be like slightly different colors. So if anything, it actually probably makes it look more legit. So I'm happy with that. You can see though, when you compare these two next to each other, that the detail of this one does make it look quite interesting. And this one that I've only done with thicker stuff does look a bit basic. So we'll see how we go. I might try and do like final touches with the really fine one just to embellish what we've already got, because this does look good actually, even though it's like so not perfect. Like it's my little underwear house. But it does actually look good with all of that detail on it. And I think it's just because it's fine, but it's because I kept going. Like this one, I just did a little bit of stuff on it and that's that. Whereas this one, I just went and went and went until there was no more space to fill. And obviously with a thinner icing, you can do more. So lesson learned there. Good little exhibit A and exhibit B. So now that I'm confident that this new gingerbread colour will work, I'm going to start making the rest of the gingerbread houses. And I'm going to keep these ones a little bit more simple. All right, so here's what I've got to say about this so far. I'm literally at the stage where I'm turning into a little production line. And it's so much easier and so much more enjoyable to do it this way. I think my ambitious designs are like interesting, but what I'm trying to do is make a little village and put it under a tree. It's the kind of thing that you're going to look at from far away. You're not going to look at it up close. So the little details of the complicated ones, they can't even really be appreciated from far away. I also think that when you're making them this way, the design is obviously so much more simple. And what that means is that you can just make them so much easier, because all you need to do is decide what the face of the gingerbread house is going to be. And the roof only ever needs to be like a rectangle. And then it's up to you whether you want to put something on the side that's going to look like the house, or just what I'm planning to do for some of them, just cut up a piece of cardboard and just make it like a side support so that the focus really just is the front of the gingerbread house. Because I've realized that, yeah, maybe you do want a few like detailed ones, especially perhaps at the front of the tree. But for the majority of it, they're all going to be clustered together. It's just really about the quantity of having lots of them that makes it look like a village, and you don't need to have the details as much. So I'm actually enjoying this a lot more now that I'm just like making some cute little shapes that are a bit more simple. And to be quite honest, I actually prefer the more simple one than the complicated one. So you can get complicated with your design if that's what you feel like doing. I still have one little remnant balcony, I think, when I was thinking about doing another one, but I won't be. So I like this more simple approach anyway. Like, it's just going to be more, I think it's going to be more quaint looking, you know? And this is truly what gingerbread houses are supposed to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these off. These are just drying. Once it's dry, I need to add the windows and then assemble each of the houses and then put together my little village.